Hello everyone, welcome back. So today we have a very interesting problem to solve and we will be using common table expression CTE for solving that. So you must have heard about CTE a lot and how we can incorporate that into a Pyspark code also. So we'll learn about that today. So before starting the video, you can just click on the subscribe button and the like button to show more motivation to me. So let's start off. Today we have the input data, so we can see that the input data consists of 3 columns. And also, just to mention, this was a real life business requirement which I had received a few days back, and I have just tried to replicate that, of course with not the real values, but the scenario was the same. So we have 3 columns: transaction ID, status and timestamp. You can see the values. We have 3 unique values in this. So the use case is basically that the transaction ID AB1234 has status as started, and it has a particular timestamp that when the status was started. And then the second row says that AB1234 has status as declined along with the timestamp. And then again the transaction ID AB1234 became status as processing, and then again it became declined. Okay, so the use case was that I want to find the status of a particular transaction ID when it became declined for the first time, right? So in this case AB1234 became declined for 2 times. One was at this time 10:05 and another was 10:15, right? So it became declined 2 times. But I want to find the status when it declined for the first time. So in this case, transaction ID AB1234 will have the prior status as started only, not processing, started, because that was the status when it declined for the first time. Okay, so how do we solve this? We will take the CTE approach and do it step by step. I already have it solved because I make very short videos and I don't want to go to the long route. So let's start it with solving CTE. So what I will do is I have just created a CTE first named previous status. Okay, so let me just copy this and show you what the intermediate results will be. Okay, so this is a CTE. What CTE is basically that it kind of creates a temporary table, and then so let's say this is the query, right? This query I have assigned to this CTE called previous status. So the next time in this query itself, if I try to select from previous status, I will get some data. So it's basically a kind of temporary table which has the data this query gives the output for. Okay, so what am I doing over here? So what are the columns that we need? We need the transaction ID column, we need the status column, and we need the timestamp column as well, right? So of course in the select clause we have these 3 mandatory columns. Then we are using the function called lag. Okay, so what does lag do? Lag basically retrieves the previous row's status for the same column. Like in this case I'm considering transaction ID, so whatever was the value for the same primary key or for the same column key that I have used, it will retrieve that. So it's basically, in English also we say lag, right? So lag means a delay, but it will just retrieve the previous row's values. Okay, so in this case what am I doing? I'm doing a lag on the status column, right? Why? Because I need the prior status column to the first time it was declined, so I need the previous row's value and for the same transaction ID. So for that I'm using lag of status, and lag comes with a clause called over. Okay, so what am I doing inside over? Partition by transaction ID. Why? Because I want for each transaction IDs, I want to find, like, for in this case if I consider AB1234, I want to find that what was the previous row status for transaction ID AB1234. Okay, and ordering by the timestamp, of course, because I want to know that which status happened. So started happened at which time, declined happened at which time, processing happened on which time, again declined happened on which time. That is why. And again I'm doing a lag of timestamp also, and over clause is the same because I don't want to change the partition, because transaction ID PID is the one which should be partitioned, because it will, just to give a brief about partition. So I have a video on that as well, but just to give a brief of what partition does. So let's say if I'm partitioning by transaction ID in this column, right, we have three unique transaction IDs over here, right? AB1234, AB5678 and AB9101. So when I say partition by transaction ID, it creates a group for each transaction ID. So for AB1234 there will be one group, AB5678 there will be one group, and AB9101 there will be one group. Okay, that is why partition by transaction ID. And this scenario we are very clear that it has to be on the transaction ID, because we want to know that what was the status of the transaction ID. So this is my first CTE. Okay, so now let's say I have run this query. So this query, whatever values it gets, that is stored in this temp table previous status. Okay, so what will be the output? Now for AB1234 we have status as started and then timestamp as this. So it's just going to work on each row and fetch the previous status and the previous timestamp. Okay, so now for this first row where it was status as started, we do not have a prior, like a previous row to it, right? So when I apply the lag of status, my previous status will be null, right? Similarly, when I apply that lag of timestamp, the previous timestamp will be null. Why? Because this is the first row, there's no previous row to it. Now when it goes to the second row where the status is declined, it will fetch the value of the previous row for this transaction ID AB1234 only, because I have partitioned by the transaction ID. So the second row, what does it become? The transaction ID is AB1234, status is decline, timestamp what we have 10:05, and then it fetches the previous status which was started, right, and the previous timestamp also, which was 10 o'clock. Now again it goes to the third row, fetches the previous status and the previous timestamp. Like this data set is created for each of the transaction IDs. Okay, this is the output that we get from this query, and that is stored in previous status. Now my second part. So I think this up to this is clear. If you have any doubts, please mention the time of the video at which I'm explaining this and comment, so I can just explain over comments also. Thank you. So now what am I doing? The second part is that I'm selecting from my previous status CTE, right, and I'm filtering for the declined. Okay, because that is what we need to know, that in this input data, when was the first time and became declined, what was the status for that. Okay, so if you see over here, let's take an example of AB1234. Okay, so this is my intermittent output. So I will check that what was status was declined 2 times. So one is this and one is this, right? So what will I do? What I will do is, so I have a function called row number. It's a window function. What row number does is it just assigns unique values to each of the rows, and like for example, let's say given a condition that I'm partitioning by transaction ID only AB1234, the row number it will give for this particular record is 1, and then again the row number it will give is for 2, like this. Okay, but then we also have to assign the order also, that which order I want the row number to be assigned, so that I will discuss. But it's a window function. I do not have any video as of now, but I will upload a video on window function as well, but it's only on the internet, so you can check that. So what am I doing? From this previous status temp table, I am selecting transaction ID, previous status. See, because I do not need the status anymore, right? I have already fetched the previous status, and that is my end goal. So that's why I'm selecting previous status. And timestamp also I'm selecting. It's just an alias that I have given, the decline timestamp, but it fetches the timestamp column only. And then the trick over here, that row number over partition by transaction ID ordered by timestamp, and that is I'm aliasing as RN. Okay, and also I am checking that where status is declined, and this is a very important condition, previous status is not null, right? If you see this intermediate output over here, the previous status is null, and I don't want that, right? Because this just specifies that there was no previous record to it, there was no previous row to it. So as per the lag function, it did fetch, but this is not needed for us. So this is a very important condition over here. Okay, so as per this condition, what it will do is it will assign a row number to each of the declined row within a transaction ID ordered by the timestamp. Okay, and when I say ordered by timestamp, if I do not give anything called DSC, it automatically considered it as ascending. Okay, so this is my output after I run this. So let's take AB1234. It just checked for status as declined, so these two rows will be fetched. Okay, and for the first row the status is started, the second row the status is processing. We have the timestamp along with that, and since we are partitioning by the transaction ID ordered by the timestamp, so in this case for AB1234, this is a partition, right? This is a group, and the timestamp is ordered by ascending, so between these two records this is the ascending timestamp, and it has got a row number of 1. And since this is the descending timestamp, like this is the second timestamp, this happened afterwards, the row number is 2. As for AB5678 is considered, we have only one record, so we have 1, and AB9101 we have only one record, so we have row number as 1. I hope this is clear. Now the final selection. So what do we want? We do not want both the rows of AB1234, right? I mean, we do not want both the previous statuses. We only want the previous status when it happened for the first time, when it went to decline for the first time. So we have to select only this one. Okay, so it's very clear. So on this CTE first decline temp table, what we are going to do is we are just going to write that whatever we want to select, so select transaction ID, previous status, decline timestamp, and only we want to select the row number 1. Okay, so if the use case would have been the other way around, where it was declined for the last time, then we would have been selected this one, because that happened at a later stage. In this case it happened in the prior stage, so this is why row number 1 is selected. Okay, so this is my final output. So for AB1234, the previous status is started, timestamp is this, for this AB5678 status is completed, and for this it is started. So you see, this is how we can solve it with CTE. We can just break it down into different steps, and then we write the whole code. So CTE might seem very overwhelming at first when you write, but the trick is to just break it down into parts like we did. So first this part where we just have an intermediate output, that for each record how it will show, then put conditions on that, and then the final condition on that. Now the same code I will solve with Pyspark. So I have already written the code, so let me just quickly browse through it. Now since this should be clear for you, this should also be easier as I'm just converting it. So I'm not going to explain all this because we have discussed about this in previous videos, that first we need to get the data set, then the columns will act as the headers, and then when I run through df equal to spark.create data frame, and it just creates a tabular format, right? And one thing that I need to add over here is the column timestamp, which is casted as the timestamp, okay, just for the um, data type issue. So now over here what I need to do, since I want to find it within each transaction ID, right? For example, I want to find it within AB1234 or AB5678, AB9101. Initially only I will partition this. So Pyspark is a little different from SQL, right? It is more code based. In SQL you can do multiple things at once. In Pyspark you have to do it step by step. So I find it very, more organized and step specific, which is easier, but again, pros and cons. So first what we are going to do, we are partitioning it by the transaction ID and ordering by the timestamp. Okay, so this thing basically is nothing but the first CTE that we had, this previous status one. Okay, so you see over here we had over partition by transaction ID, order by timestamp. So in the first step only we are just applying this, so the data set will be filtered as per that, and on that data set what we will do is we will apply the lag of status and lag of timestamp. So if you just see it very mathematically, we have defined a variable called window spec, okay, which is basically this formula that is already defined, and then just using it in the next step and putting a lag of status and lag of timestamp under it. Okay, and since this is a data frame, so we want to create a new column to it. So with column is the code with which you add a new column. So this is my previous status wala temp table done. So on that, what do I want to do? I want to run my next step, which is this this condition, status equal to declined and pref status is not null. Okay, so that is what I did a filter. So filter is equivalent to where condition, and status is equal to declined and previous status is not null. And now what do I want to do? I want to apply a row number to this. So in SQL you see that we have a hierarchy, right? First we have seen that there's a where condition, and on top of that we are applying the row number. When I explained this, you also saw that. So first in Pyspark when I'm converting, first I will check what is the status, what is the condition. So once that condition is fulfilled, then I will apply my row number, because initially if I apply row number and then I apply the condition, doesn't make sense, it just complicates it. So my condition is done, and then I am applying that. Okay, I want to do it per individual transaction ID ordered by the timestamp, like the first timestamp should come first, so not giving any ascending or descending, automatically it takes ascending. And then the last step, that where the row number is equal to 1, and then this is my last data set. So I've added a column rn and applying the row number function on this, and this is my last data set, which will give me individual transaction ID, but one instance of it, because I've already filtered that row number is 1. And then the final data set, which only selects the required columns, and I have aliased it also, and then I'm showing the result. So I hope this is clear. If you just solve it step by step, it will be very much clear to you. So this type of questions do appear in interviews also, and this was a very real life scenario required from the business. So that's it for today. If you like my video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. I will bring up more content on data engineering. Thank you.